The unseen threat. The universe was vast, filled with millions of galaxies, each with its own secrets. Among these, Earth was seen as just another small planet in a quiet corner of the cosmos. For centuries, the Council, a group of powerful and ancient species, had watched over Earth from the shadows. They had given one rule to the galaxy: leave Earth alone, especially its children. The Council knew something the rest of the universe didn't. Earth wasn't as it appeared. The planet was home to more than just humans. It was a place where ancient power was hidden, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Earth's children, the humans, were not as weak as many believed. They had been tested and tried, surviving against impossible odds for centuries. But no one knew just how powerful they truly were. This peace was fragile. The galaxy was full of empires, both old and new, constantly fighting for control. Many species saw Earth as a perfect prize, untouched, isolated, and rich with resources. But the Council's warning was clear: no one could touch Earth, no one could harm its children. Yet there were always those who refused to listen. They believed that the Council's protection was a sign of weakness, a way to keep the galaxy in check. They thought that the humans, simple creatures with their wars and primitive technology, could never pose a real threat. But they were wrong. One of these species, the Sortians, was the first to break the rule. Known for their vast fleet and advanced technology, the Sortians were powerful and ruthless. They saw Earth as an easy target. Its people were not united. Its military forces were scattered and outdated. They believed they could conquer Earth and bend its people to their will. The Sortians had been watching Earth for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They studied its weaknesses, gathered intelligence, and even infiltrated the planet, planting spies to learn about humanity's defenses. They believed the humans were unprepared, unaware of the power that lay dormant within their planet. They were wrong. The first signs of trouble began when the Sortian fleet entered Earth's atmosphere. Their ships were massive, their weapons powerful enough to destroy entire cities with a single strike. They came in the dead of night, invisible to Earth's primitive detection systems, expecting no resistance. But Earth wasn't as helpless as they thought. Deep within Earth's core, an ancient energy began to stir. It was a power that had been hidden for millennia, a gift from long-forgotten guardians. This energy, once dormant, was now waking up. The moment the Sortians crossed into Earth's space, they triggered the ancient defense systems. They had unknowingly awakened the protectors of Earth, Earth's hidden guardians. These guardians were not the soldiers of Earth's past wars, nor were they anything the Sortians could have prepared for. The guardians were the last line of defense, and they were far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had been watching, waiting for the moment when Earth's children would need them most. That moment had come. As the Sortian fleet advanced, they encountered something they couldn't comprehend. Ships began to disappear from their radar. Their weapons, once powerful, malfunctioned in the presence of Earth's defense systems. The Sortians were confused, panicked. They had no idea what was happening. At the same time, Earth's military forces, once considered weak and outdated, began to respond. Their ships, designed for defense, now seemed unstoppable. The Sortians' carefully planned invasion turned into chaos. The humans were fighting back with a strength they had never shown before. The Sortians didn't know it yet, but they had made a grave mistake. They had awakened something much bigger than themselves. The Council, watching from the shadows, knew what was happening. They had hoped that Earth would never need to awaken its guardians, but they understood that the time had come. The Sortians' actions had set off a chain reaction that could not be stopped. Earth was no longer just a quiet, isolated planet. It was a power to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, the situation was growing more dire by the hour. The humans were holding their own, but the Sortian fleet was relentless. Cities were being destroyed, and countless lives were lost. Yet there was a strange feeling of hope among the defenders. They knew that something was coming, something that would turn the tide in their favor. As the battle raged on, Earth's children began to realize the truth. They weren't alone. The ancient energy that had been hidden deep within their planet was now flowing through them. The Guardians had not only awoken, but they were reaching out, guiding Earth's children. The fight for Earth's survival had only just begun, and the Sortians would soon learn that they had made a terrible mistake. The Sortians had underestimated Earth, thinking they could conquer it easily. But in their arrogance, they had woken something far more powerful than they could ever imagine. The universe would soon find out that Earth's children were not just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. And the Sortians would soon regret the day they ever thought they could invade Earth. The Sortian fleet moved through the darkness of space, their ships gliding silently toward Earth. The commanders of the fleet were confident. They had the numbers, the firepower, and the element of surprise. Earth's defenses had been bypassed with ease. At least, that's what they thought. The first ship to encounter resistance was a massive dreadnought, built for nothing but destruction. It had been carefully designed to punch through even the most formidable defense systems. The Sortians thought it would be a simple matter of disarming Earth's weak military, but they couldn't have been more wrong. As the dreadnought's sensors swept across the horizon of Earth's atmosphere, it detected something unusual. The ship's AI, a sophisticated system built to predict and outmaneuver enemy movements, froze. There were sudden anomalies, glitches in the system, irregular readings from the ship's own sensors. The AI couldn't make sense of it. The Sortian captain, an experienced warrior named Radar, stood in front of the view screen, eyeing Earth's surface. He had no idea what was about to happen. Earth's defenses were rudimentary, primitive at best. Yet there was a feeling in the air, a sense that something ancient was stirring. And then it happened. The dreadnought's communication system crackled to life, but it wasn't a voice that spoke. It was a warning, a strange signal that appeared out of nowhere, flashing across the ship's screens. The signal was old, older than any technology the Sortians had ever encountered. It seemed to be a message from Earth itself, a warning that had been hidden for millennia. Rondar stared at the message, his mind racing. The signal was too complex for the ship's AI to decipher, but one thing was clear: Earth was not as it appeared. The captain ordered the fleet to move forward, brushing aside the unease that had started to creep into his thoughts. The Sortians continued their assault on Earth's outer defenses, but something strange began to happen. Their weapons, once capable of tearing through entire fleets, began to misfire. At first, it was a few minor malfunctions, easily brushed aside. But then, entire ships started losing power, as if their very systems were being overridden. The Sortians' pride quickly turned into panic. They had encountered advanced civilizations before, but nothing like this. Nothing had prepared them for Earth's defense systems, systems they had no knowledge of. It wasn't just Earth's military that was putting up a fight. Something far older, something far more powerful, had been awakened. Back on Earth, the world's leaders watched in shock as their forces began to hold their ground against the overwhelming Sortian fleet. People on the ground began to notice something strange. The skies above were filled with a strange energy, a shimmer that could not be explained. Some believed it was a fluke, a temporary glitch, but those who had been paying attention knew the truth. The energy was building. In the quiet corridors of Earth's secret facilities, a small group of scientists and military leaders gathered, preparing for what they knew was coming. For years, they had studied the ancient texts and prophecies that spoke of Earth's hidden power. They had never believed it would come to this, but now, with the Sortians' invasion in full swing, they understood what had been prophesied. The Guardians, the ancient protectors of Earth, had been asleep for eons, hidden deep beneath the surface of the planet. Only the most ancient beings knew of their existence, and even then, the details were scarce. But now, the time had come. The Guardians were waking up. At first, there were no signs. Earth's military continued to engage the Sortians, and the world's population prayed for a miracle. But as the hours passed, something started to shift. The strange energy that had been building began to take form. Out of nowhere, a massive pulse of light shot from the ground, visible from space. The Sortian fleet, already disoriented by the strange interference, was now thrown into complete chaos. Their ships shook as if they were caught in a storm, their systems glitching and sparking uncontrollably. For the first time in their invasion, the Sortians found themselves on the defensive. They had underestimated Earth, but worse, had awakened something they couldn't control. Back on Earth, people stared up at the skies in awe and fear. The strange pulse of light seemed to reach into the very core of their souls, awakening something deep within. It wasn't just the military that felt it. It was everyone. The Guardians were not just a myth. They were real, and they were coming. As the Sortians struggled to maintain control of their fleet, Earth's true power began to emerge. Ships that had once been considered primitive were now launching with an energy they had never known before. Human soldiers, once viewed as weak and easily defeated, were now showing strength and resolve that no one could have predicted. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their home, their families, their future. The galaxy had made a grave mistake. The Council had tried to warn them, but they had not listened. The Sortians had awakened Earth's guardians, and now the universe would tremble at the consequences. The battle for Earth was far from over, but one thing was certain: the humans were not alone. And the Guardians, once hidden deep within the planet, were now ready to make their presence known. The Sortian fleet, once confident in their overwhelming numbers and superior technology, now found themselves on the edge of panic. Their ships, each armed to the teeth with weapons capable of annihilating entire civilizations, had become little more than floating targets. Something was wrong, something that they couldn't explain. The pulse of energy that had erupted from Earth's surface was not just a one-time phenomenon. It was only the beginning. The moment the energy had hit the Sortian fleet, it had sent a shockwave through their systems. Their weapons began to misfire, their shields flickered, and their engines sputtered as if an invisible force had taken hold of their ships. The fleet was no longer in control. "Report," Captain Radar barked, his voice trembling for the first time since he had taken command. He had seen battle before, but never like this. Never against something like this. The Sortian officer beside him, usually calm and collected, was sweating as he frantically typed commands into his control panel. "We're losing power, Captain," the officer reported, his voice strained. "Our weapon systems are offline. The shields are down to 30%. We cannot continue the assault." Radar's mind raced. They had been so sure, so certain. Earth was just another primitive world, easily subjugated. They had never expected any kind of resistance, let alone something like this. He had heard the rumors, the legends of the human guardians, but he had dismissed them as old myths, stories passed down by their ancestors. But now, in the face of overwhelming power, he realized how gravely wrong he had been. On Earth, the situation was becoming clearer to the military leaders and the scientists who had spent years preparing for the day when the Guardians would awaken. As the energy pulse spread, it wasn't just the Sortians who felt it. It was everyone on Earth. Governments, military forces, and ordinary citizens began to realize the magnitude of what was happening. Reports from all over the world flooded in. Satellites had detected strange formations in the skies, and unexplainable energy surges were being reported from all major cities. People could feel it in the air. Something was changing. The skies above were no longer empty. They were filled with the echo of the Guardians' power. Back in Earth's secret facilities, the high-ranking generals and scientists watched as the Guardians' influence began to take shape. Hidden deep within the core of the planet, ancient machines began to activate, one by one. The hum of long-dormant technology filled the air as the ground beneath them rumbled with the awakening of Earth's hidden defenders. On the surface, the humans began to fight back. Once, they had been a scattered species, separated by continents and languages, their technology primitive compared to that of the Sortians. But now, the humans were united, not just by their will to survive, but by the knowledge that something far greater was with them, something they had been unaware of, even as they prepared for war. Their ships, once outmatched by the alien invaders, now surged forward with newfound power. Weapons that had once been used for simple defense now held the weight of Earth's fate in them. The Sortians had unwittingly unleashed the wrath of something they had no hope of understanding. Across the battlefield, a strange sight unfolded. The Guardians, once thought to be mere myths, began to emerge from their hidden sanctuaries beneath Earth's surface. Massive constructs, built from ancient indestructible materials, rose into the air. They were not machines in the way the Sortians understood them, but something far more advanced. They seemed alive, driven by an intelligence and will that transcended the physical. The Sortians watched in horror as the first Guardian, a towering figure of glowing metal and energy, took to the sky. It moved with grace and power, deflecting enemy fire with a mere thought, its presence radiating an overwhelming sense of purpose. The Sortians fired their weapons, but their attacks seemed useless. The Guardians were impervious to their firepower. In a desperate bid to regain control, Radar ordered his fleet to concentrate all firepower on the approaching Guardians. But it was too late. The Guardians, with their unimaginable power, retaliated. The first blast from the Guardians' energy weapons cut through the Sortian ships with terrifying precision. It wasn't just the destruction of their ships that stunned the invaders. It was the fact that the energy pulses seemed to erase them, as if they never existed. Entire vessels were reduced to glowing particles, their massive structures vanishing without a trace. Radar's fleet was crumbling before his eyes. The pride of the Sortian Empire, their most advanced warships, were now nothing but debris floating aimlessly in space. The captain's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the enormity of his mistake. They had not just underestimated Earth's defenses, they had triggered a force beyond their comprehension. On the ground, Earth's forces were organizing with newfound confidence. The ancient Guardians were fighting for them, and for the first time in centuries, humanity's greatest weapon was revealed: unity. People from all corners of the world came together, drawn by the strength of their awakened Guardians. Humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. Back in space, the Sortians were in full retreat. The once feared invaders now found themselves scattered and demoralized, their entire fleet being dismantled piece by piece. And as their ships fled into the void, the survivors realized they would never make the same mistake again. The universe had underestimated Earth. And now, the Guardians had awakened. The wrath of Earth's protectors had been unleashed, and no one would ever forget the price the Sortians had paid. The galaxy trembled as the energy pulse from Earth rippled through space, not just affecting the Sortian fleet, but echoing across distant star systems. The humans had always been seen as fragile, their technological prowess lagging behind the galaxy's great powers. But now, it was clear to all that Earth was no longer weak. The human Guardians, beings of untold power, had emerged from their ancient slumber and were wreaking havoc across the battlefield. On Earth, the impact was even more profound. People who had once lived in fear, who had cowered under the threat of alien forces, now stood tall, filled with a fierce resolve. The Guardians were more than just protectors. They were symbols of human resilience and unity. For the first time, every corner of the planet was united, not by fear, but by hope. People had seen the impossible made real. The stories they had once heard in hushed whispers about the Guardians were now unfolding before their eyes. As Earth's military forces coordinated with the Guardians, an unprecedented wave of victories followed. Cities that were once considered vulnerable were now fortified, their defenses reinforced by the very power that had once seemed mythic. The Sortians, still reeling from the devastation they had wrought, began to feel the weight of their mistakes. Their ships, once capable of laying waste to entire planets, were no match for the ancient might of Earth's defenders. Radar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the chaos. The survivors in his fleet were frantically attempting to regroup, but they were being hunted by the Guardians. Each Sortian vessel that tried to escape was caught by the powerful energy blasts of the awakened Guardians. There was nowhere to run, and every attempt to fight back only ended in failure. "Captain, we've lost communications with several of our fleets," a voice from behind radar reported, pulling him from his thoughts. The officer's face was pale, and his hand shook as he held up a communication screen, displaying the destruction of a nearby Sortian battle cruiser. "They're unstoppable," Radar muttered under his breath. "The humans, they've truly awakened something beyond our understanding." The Sortians had always believed that their empire, their technology, and their sheer strength made them invincible. They had underestimated Earth, underestimated the power that lay dormant beneath its surface. Now it was clear that the humans were not just defending their world, they were reclaiming it. In the heart of Earth's capital, a global conference was taking place. Leaders from every nation gathered to discuss the next steps. The Sortians had underestimated them, but humanity was no longer interested in merely surviving. The humans had learned a valuable lesson. The true strength of their species didn't lie in their weapons or technology alone, but in their ability to adapt, to unite, and to fight for what they believed in. "I don't think the Sortians will stop," General Ortiz said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "They've made their demands. They thought they could intimidate us into submission. But they will return. We have to be ready." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled in. The Guardians had shown that humanity could fight back, but the battle for Earth was far from over. The Sortians would not forget the humiliation they had suffered, and if anything, they would return with even greater fury. But General Ortiz wasn't afraid. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every leader present. They had been fighting for survival long before the Sortians arrived. And now, with the Guardians at their side, they would do whatever it took to protect their world. Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a symbol of defiance, of resilience, and of humanity's refusal to back down. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Sortian fleet was fragmenting. The once unified forces were now splintered, with ships scattered across vast distances. The remaining fleet commanders were locked in frantic discussions, trying to formulate a strategy that might allow them to recover from the disaster that had befallen them. But the truth was undeniable. The Sortians were broken. They had lost their greatest advantage. And now, as they retreated into the dark reaches of space, they could only wonder how long it would take before Earth's wrath, powered by the Guardians, reached their doorstep. The humans, however, were no longer content to wait. Earth's people had tasted victory, and they knew there was no turning back. The battle for Earth had begun, but it was only a matter of time before humanity would strike back at the heart of their would-be conquerors. The Sortians had made their mistake. They had awakened the human Guardians. And now, there would be no mercy. The silence of space, once again, echoed with the distant hum of fleets assembling. Except this time, the fleets were not the ones of the Sortians. Earth's battle stations had lit up like a beacon in the dark void, powered by the immense force of the Guardians. The ancient protectors had taken their place at the head of the charge, and their powers were felt across every corner of the galaxy. The Sortians had underestimated humanity's resilience, their collective might, and the legendary warriors that guarded their world. And now, the Guardians were no longer hidden in the shadows of myth. The humans, united by a single purpose, were on the offensive. The Sortians had drawn first blood, but they had awakened a force unlike any other. Rahadar paced back and forth across the command deck of his flagship, his mind racing. The reports were coming in too fast to process. His fleet had suffered devastating losses. His people, once feared across the galaxy, were now retreating at the mercy of Earth's wrath. No matter how much they tried to regroup, the Guardians had already anticipated every move, countered every strike, and struck back with unrelenting fury. "What now, Captain?" an officer asked, his voice tinged with fear. Rahadar clenched his jaw, his thoughts dark. "We regroup. We escape. We survive. We cannot allow them to destroy us completely. But deep down, Radar knew the truth. The Sortians had underestimated the humans. And worse, they had awakened the very guardians that had long protected Earth. Those guardians were no ordinary soldiers. They were ancient beings with powers that defied comprehension, and the Sortians had no way to predict their next move. The battle raged on, but the Sortians' resolve was fading. Their once impressive armada was now scattered, their formations broken. The humans had proven they could strike with precision, their weapons deadly, their tactics flawless. Every attempt to regroup was thwarted by Earth's technological supremacy. And then, the unimaginable happened. The first Guardian fleet arrived at the Sortian flagship, silent, imposing, and relentless. The ship's hull shimmered with an ethereal glow, as if powered by a cosmic force. Radar could feel the pressure in his chest as the massive ships moved closer, their weapons ready to fire. It was only a matter of time before the Sortians were completely surrounded. "Prepare for impact," Radar ordered, though he knew it was futile. There was no escape from this. The Guardians' energy blasts shattered the Sortian shields like glass. The Sortian fleet fought back with what little they had left, but it was hopeless. The Guardians were too strong, their firepower too great. One by one, the Sortian ships were disintegrated in bursts of bright, blinding light. On Earth, celebrations began. The humans watched as the signals from the battlefront showed victory after victory. It had taken years to build the strength necessary to defend their planet, and now their sacrifices were paying off. But there was no joy in their hearts. Not yet. The war was far from over. They had made their stand, but they knew that the Sortians would regroup and return. The battle on Earth's soil had shifted. The defenses were bolstered, cities were fortified, and the people were no longer afraid. They had seen what humanity was capable of. The Guardians had answered the call. And now, Earth stood as a symbol of defiance, a shining beacon in the galaxy that no one would dare challenge. But somewhere in the vastness of space, the Sortians regrouped, their eyes set on Earth. They had underestimated humanity once before, but now they had learned the hard way. The humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, guardians of their world. And the Sortians would not stop until they had broken the human spirit. Radar stared at the chaos unfolding before him, his mind filled with rage and fear. He knew his people could not survive this fight. The Guardians were too powerful. And worse, they had the will to protect their planet at all costs. The Sortians, once proud conquerors, now found themselves outmatched, and they were about to learn that there was no greater force in the galaxy than the wrath of Earth. The calm that followed was more chilling than the battle itself. The Sortian fleet, once vast and invincible, was now reduced to scattered remnants. Radar, along with the remaining leadership of the Sortian fleet, gathered aboard what was left of their flagship. The holographic map of the galaxy before him flickered, showing Earth as a dark, glowing spot, the symbol of defiance. Radar could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His people, once the dominant force across the galaxy, had underestimated the humans. They had thought Earth would be easy to conquer, but what they didn't understand was the sheer willpower and strength that lived within the human spirit. Earth was not just a planet. It was a force that could not be crushed by any foreign power. "We've lost," one of Radar's advisors spoke quietly, his voice trembling. "The Guardians are too strong. We've underestimated them from the very beginning." Radar didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared into the holographic map. Earth, with its blue oceans and green continents, glowed with an unsettling intensity. It wasn't just a planet. It had become a beacon. And now, every species in the galaxy would know it. No one would dare challenge Earth again. But Radar also knew that his people wouldn't surrender. The Sortians were too proud to admit defeat. They would fight until the very last breath, even if it meant sacrificing their entire fleet. Radar turned to face his commanders, his eyes steely with resolve. "We fight to the end," he declared, though deep down, he knew it was a losing battle. We must ensure that Earth's victory does not become a symbol of our weakness. But it was too late for that. The Sortians had already shown their weakness by underestimating the humans, and now they had awakened a sleeping giant. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The victory had been achieved. But the war was not yet over. The people had proved their strength, and the Guardians were still present, standing guard over the planet. But the true cost of the conflict was becoming clear. Earth's victory had come at the cost of immense loss, both on the battlefield and in the hearts of the survivors. While the humans had won, they had paid a steep price, and now they would have to ensure that their peace remained intact. The sound of approaching ships echoed across the skies of Earth. Humanity had won, but the galaxy was still filled with enemies who would stop at nothing to see Earth's demise. The Sortians, now desperate, would return. The Guardians would stand ready, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on Earth's people. Radar's fleet was gathering what was left of their strength. Earth had become their obsession, their nemesis. They had come to conquer, but now they would have to face the consequences. The Sortians would learn that humanity was not a race to be underestimated, and they would pay dearly for every misstep. As the final battle loomed, Radar looked to the stars, knowing that this fight would define the future of both the Sortians and humanity. The universe, once so vast and distant, now felt small and closing in. There was no turning back. The final stand was upon them, and only one side would emerge victorious. The universe held its breath as the final phase of the conflict began. It would be a battle like no other, where the fate of Earth and the Sortian Empire would be decided. The final battle was upon them. Earth's sky, once peaceful and calm, now swirled with the thunderous roar of warships. Humanity had pushed back the invaders before, but the Sortians weren't finished yet. Their pride had been shattered, but that didn't mean they were ready to surrender. The stars above Earth were filled with the cold, unblinking eyes of ships, looming like vultures waiting for a fallen prey. But this time, it wasn't Earth that would fall, it was the Sortians. Rahadar stood on the bridge of what was left of his fleet, watching as the human ships formed ranks. He could feel it in the air, the tense energy, the unspoken resolve. He had never seen humanity this determined. They weren't just fighting for their survival now. They were fighting to make a statement. The war had become personal for Earth's defenders. They weren't going to just repel the Sortians. They were going to destroy them, once and for all. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice from behind him. "The fleet is ready, Commander. We're outnumbered, but not outgunned." His second in command, a battle-hardened Sortian, spoke with confidence, though there was a hint of doubt in her voice. Radar didn't turn to face her. His eyes were fixed on Earth, the planet that had defied them so fiercely. He had underestimated humanity, and now they were going to pay for it. But there was something else in his mind, something that he hadn't expected. Fear. He had never been afraid of any species before. But Earth wasn't just another planet. There was something primal about humanity, something that made them a force to be reckoned with. And now, Radar was about to face the full brunt of that force. "Ready the fleet," Radar said, his voice cold. "We either win today, or we perish." Meanwhile, on Earth, the Guardians, humans who had volunteered to defend their planet, prepared for the final battle. The military, the civilians, everyone was involved. No one was going to sit this one out. They had become a unified force, a single entity determined to protect what was theirs. The commanders of Earth's fleets communicated the orders with precise efficiency, but it wasn't just strategy that would win this battle. It was willpower. Each human fighter knew what was at stake. The world had already seen what happened when the Sortians underestimated them. Now, it was time to show them what happened when they refused to listen. The first wave of Sortian ships moved forward with chilling speed, aiming directly at Earth's defenses. The human ships, with their battle-tested crews, responded instantly. It was a firestorm of energy, shields clashing, missiles flying in every direction. The skies above Earth became a kaleidoscope of lights, bright streaks of fire, explosions, and the booming sound of weaponry. But Earth's forces, led by the Guardians, were unrelenting. Every move, every shot was calculated. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were making a statement. They had won their place in the galaxy, and no one, not even the mighty Sortians, was going to take that away from them. Radar's fleet was crumbling. The sheer might of humanity's defense was overwhelming. Ships were breaking apart, consumed by explosions. The remnants of the Sortian forces tried to regroup, but it was too late. Earth's defenders were everywhere, outflanking them at every turn. It was no longer a battle of firepower, it was a battle of spirit. Humanity's will was stronger than the Sortians had ever imagined. With every ship that fell, the survivors of the Sortian fleet grew quieter. The fear that Radar had tried to suppress was now evident in every one of his officers. This was no longer a conflict. This was humanity's statement to the galaxy. Never again would Earth be threatened. Radar, standing at the center of his failing fleet, knew the truth. They had lost. The humans had proven their resilience, their strength, their will. And as his flagship, the pride of the Sortian fleet, began to burn in the atmosphere above Earth, Radar realized just how badly he had miscalculated. He had underestimated Earth's children, and now the cost was far too great. Back on Earth, the battle raged on, but the tide had turned. With each passing moment, humanity pushed the invaders further back. The message was clear: the Guardians of Earth were not to be trifled with. As the last of the Sortian ships disintegrated in the skies above Earth, a new dawn broke. Earth had won. The invaders had been pushed back, and the galaxy would never forget the day that humanity had shown its true power. The universe, once again, stood still, watching, waiting, and now respecting the once humble planet that had proven its strength. The Earth had not just defended itself. It had become a force that no one would dare challenge again. The final reckoning had come, and humanity had emerged victorious.